Welcome back to Nerd's Best Advice, and today we're going to dive into a little bit of C++ with a Hello World application, the standard first program to write when you're learning a new language. So, first of all, we're going to be in Visual Studio. I'm using Visual Studio 2017, I believe the preview edition. If you're going to code in C++, you don't need Visual Studio. But they have a really nice environment to work in, and if you're on Windows, I recommend that you go and download Visual Studio. There's a link in the description. Visual Studio is free. The Pro version, of course, costs some money, but you'll notice no difference with the free version. So go ahead and get Visual Studio. If you're on Linux or a Mac, there are other IDEs that you can use to write in C++, and I'll leave it to you to go and find those. I'll leave a few links in the description as well for you to find those. So, in Visual Studio, the first thing we're going to do is go to File, New, and create a new project. We're going to call this Hello World. And make sure that you have Visual C++ installed, so when you go ahead and install Visual Studio, make sure that you install C++ with it. So we're going to go to Install Languages, go to Other Languages, Visual C++, and we're going to create an empty project. Go ahead and hit OK. And while we wait for this to be created, the next thing we're going to do is create the main C++ file for the program. So C++, generally on Windows, the files end in a .cpp extension. So go ahead and find your Solution Explorer, right-click on Source Files, the folder, and click Add New Item. So make sure here you have Visual C++ file.cpp selected, and you can just leave source.cpp the default name. So go ahead and click Add, and Visual Studio will create this file for us. So now this is where we write our C++ program. So the first thing we're going to type is some little lingo, important stuff that we need to type to make sure that the program will run properly. I'll go ahead and explain that in a later video. But for now, we'll type the hashtag pound or hash symbol, and then the word include, and then a less than sign, and then IO stream, and then make sure that closes with a greater than sign. And then we're also going to go ahead and again type the hashtag, type include, less than, and then we're going to type CSTDIO, and then make sure that is closed off as well. So the first one, IO stream, stands for input output stream. The second one stands for C standard IO input output. Again, I'll go ahead and explain those in a little bit more depth later. We're also going to type using namespace std, which stands for standard, and then a semicolon. So in C++, all statements that you type will end in semicolons. Just as in, like, for example, C#. Now we're going to type int for integer, type main, and then a left and right parenthesis, and then go ahead and hit enter and do a left and right curly bracket. Now this main function here, that's what this is a function of the type integer. Don't need to worry about it too much right now, but this is the main entry point for any C++ program. So every C++ program you'll see will pretty much have this main function. So now we're going to go ahead and write the code to output hello world. So the first thing we're going to do is write cout, and then two less than signs. And now we're going to use quotes here, and type hello world exclamation mark, and go ahead and end that off with a quote. Next, we're also going to type two more less than signs, and end L, and then a semicolon. So what we're doing here with this statement is cout is telling the program to output something to the display or printer or whatever you're using the program on. And then the two less than signs is basically, if you can think about it, like it's sending whatever's after the signs into cout, which is going to the display. So every time you add something new to this, you need to add more less than signs. For example, this end L here is basically the same thing as writing \n, so it's telling the console or the program to write a new line. So what we're doing here is we're outputting hello world with a new line after that. So this is great, and if we run the program right now by going up here and clicking the green local Windows debugger button, we'll see that at least on my computer, there is a console that flashes up and then exits immediately afterwards. If you would run this program from within, for example, the command prompt, if you had this compiled and ran it from inside the command prompt, you would see the output and the console would not exit. But when you run this program on its own, the console just exits right away, so we want to be able to see the output. So what we're going to do now is we're going to type get char, short for character, spelled like char, and then left and right parentheses, a semicolon, and go down and also type return 0. Now this is not technically required by all compilers, but by returning 0, you're basically telling the operating system that your program ran and exited without any errors. So now we can go ahead and run the program, and this is going to pop up on my second screen here, but I'll drag it up to you once it runs. We can now see that we have Hello World displayed on the screen, and that the cursor is down here on the second line, which happened because we wrote endl here. So now you have written your first C++ program. It really is not that difficult to just go right ahead and get some text out on the screen. So in the next video, we'll start covering maybe some basic variable types and working with some input and output, and then eventually we'll get to working with some functions as well, and we'll get some neat stuff going here with C++. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you want to see more or you just want to help support me, which I really do appreciate because you are the people that keep me going, I'd appreciate it if you subscribed if you thought that this video was worth it. So again, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.